Sarah bounced on the balls of her feet, trying to contain her excitement. 18. Finally. But today wasn't about celebrating with friends or blowing out candles. Today was about proving herself. She was just an intern at Thompson Industries, a tiny cog in a very large machine, but she was determined to make an impression. Mr. Thompson, the CEO, was a legend. Stories whispered about his sharp mind, his relentless work ethic, and his uncanny ability to predict market trends. He was a man of few words, always impeccably dressed, and seemed to carry the weight of the entire company on his shoulders. Sarah had only seen him up close a handful of times, but each encounter left her feeling a mix of awe and intimidation. It was her birthday, but she hadn't told anyone. The other interns were probably planning parties and posting on social media, but Sarah wanted to be taken seriously. She wanted to show that she was more than just a kid fresh out of high school. Today, she would focus on her work, absorb everything she could, and maybe, just maybe, catch Mr. Thompson's eye with her dedication. Across the hall, in his corner office with the panoramic city view, Mr. Thompson was a world away from Sarah's nervous energy. He was a man sculpted by responsibility, his face etched with the lines of countless late nights and high-stakes decisions. The CEO's chair felt less like a throne and more like a heavy burden. He saw the city lights not as a glittering landscape of opportunity, but as a reminder of the thousands of employees who depended on him. He was known for his stoicism, a mask he wore to shield himself from the constant pressures. Few knew that beneath the polished exterior lay a quiet loneliness. His days were filled with meetings and negotiations, but his evenings were often spent in the sterile silence of his apartment. He longed for genuine connection, for someone who saw beyond the title and the power. He had noticed Sarah. He saw her dedication, her willingness to learn, and the spark of ambition in her eyes. He admired her work ethic, a refreshing contrast to the cynicism that seemed to permeate the upper echelons of the company. But he dismissed it, telling himself it was just youthful enthusiasm. He couldn't afford distractions. Not now. The day unfolded with a predictable rhythm. Sarah diligently filed papers, answered phones, and ran errands, all with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Each task, no matter how mundane, was an opportunity to prove her worth. She listened intently during meetings, absorbing information like a sponge, and even dared to offer suggestions, albeit quietly. Mr. Thompson remained a distant figure, a silhouette against the backdrop of his impressive office. He acknowledged her with a curt nod when their paths crossed, but his attention seemed focused on matters of far greater importance. Still, Sarah persisted, fueled by a mixture of youthful ambition and a secret hope that he would eventually see her as more than just another intern. Lunchtime came and went without fanfare. No cake, no balloons, no chorus of "Happy Birthday." Sarah ate a sandwich at her desk, scrolling through social media and seeing pictures of her friends celebrating their freedom and adulthood. A pang of longing tugged at her heart, but she quickly pushed it aside. There would be time for celebrations later. Right now, there was work to be done. This was her chance. Whispers followed Sarah throughout the afternoon. The other employees, noticing her tireless efforts, commented on her dedication. "She's a real go-getter," one of the senior accountants remarked to a colleague near the water cooler. "Doesn't even take a break. You don't see that kind of work ethic much these days, especially from an intern." The murmurs reached Mr. Thompson's ears, filtered through his executive assistant, Mrs. Davis. She subtly highlighted Sarah's performance during her daily briefing, praising her attention to detail and her positive attitude. Mr. Thompson simply nodded, absorbing the information without revealing his thoughts. But inside, a seed of curiosity had been planted. He found himself unconsciously observing Sarah, noticing the way she carried herself, the way she interacted with others, the quiet determination in her eyes. He told himself it was purely professional interest. A good employee was an asset, regardless of their age or experience. But a flicker of something else, something he had tried to suppress, stirred within him. The loneliness that had been his constant companion seemed to intensify, making Sarah's youthful energy even more alluring. He pushed the thought away, reminding himself of the boundaries that separated them. He was the CEO. She was the intern. It could never be anything more. As the clock ticked past 5, most of the office staff began to pack up, eager to start their weekend. Sarah, however, remained glued to her desk, meticulously organizing files. She noticed Mr. Thompson's lights still on in his office, a beacon in the gradually darkening building. She knew he was swamped with a crucial project, a merger that could make or break the company's future. An idea sparked in her mind. This was her chance to truly shine. Gathering her courage, she approached his open door. "Mr. Thompson," she said hesitantly, "I know you're busy, but I'm happy to stay late and help with anything you need. I'm a fast learner, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Mr. Thompson looked up, his eyes tired but a hint of surprise in them. He hesitated for a moment, considering his options. He could delegate the tasks to someone else, but they were all already gone for the day. And he had to admit, he was impressed by Sarah's initiative. "All right, Sarah," he said finally, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "I appreciate that. There are a few documents that need to be reviewed and organized. If you're sure you don't mind." "Absolutely not," Sarah replied, her heart leaping with excitement. "I'm happy to help." The office gradually transformed from a bustling hub of activity into a hushed and dimly lit space. One by one, employees bid their goodbyes, their footsteps echoing in the deserted hallways. Soon, only a handful of lights remained on, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. The hum of the air conditioning became more pronounced, a constant reminder of the emptiness surrounding them. Sarah and Mr. Thompson worked side by side in his office, the only sounds the rustling of papers and the occasional tap of a keyboard. Sarah surprised herself with her efficiency. She quickly grasped the intricacies of the documents, organizing them with a precision that impressed even Mr. Thompson. She even offered a few suggestions for streamlining the process, ideas that he hadn't considered before. He found himself drawn to her fresh perspective. He had been so bogged down in the details that he had lost sight of the bigger picture. Sarah's youthful enthusiasm and sharp mind were a welcome change. He started to relax, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. He realized he hadn't felt this calm and focused in weeks. The atmosphere in the office shifted, becoming less formal and more collaborative. An undeniable sense of intimacy began to develop, a quiet understanding between two people working towards a common goal. A final click echoed down the hall as the cleaning crew finished their rounds and locked up for the night. The only sounds now were the gentle hum of the computers and the rhythmic breathing of two people sharing a confined space. Sarah felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. The moment was approaching. The moment she had been building toward all day. She glanced at Mr. Thompson. He was engrossed in a document, his brow furrowed in concentration. He seemed oblivious to the late hour, to the emptiness of the office, to her presence. But she knew he wasn't. She could feel his awareness, a subtle tension that crackled in the air between them. Taking a deep breath, she rose from her chair. Her legs felt a little shaky, but she forced herself to move with purpose. She walked towards the door, her heart pounding in her chest. With a deliberate motion, she reached out and gently closed it. The click of the latch reverberated in the silence, a definitive sound that seemed to amplify the intimacy of the moment. The air in the room grew thick with anticipation. Now, there was no turning back. The stage was set. It was time to tell him the truth. She turned to face him, her gaze unwavering despite the tremor in her voice. Mr. Thompson finally looked up, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the frantic beating of Sarah's heart. He leaned back in his chair, waiting, a silent question in his eyes. "Mr. Thompson," she began, swallowing hard. "I know this might seem a little strange, but I felt like you should know." She paused, gathering her courage. This was it. There was no going back now. "I turned 18 today," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Just thought you should know." The words hung in the air, a fragile declaration that shattered the carefully constructed professional atmosphere. Sarah watched his face, searching for a reaction. For any sign of understanding, of judgment, of anything at all. The seconds stretched into an eternity as Mr. Thompson remained frozen, his eyes wide with surprise. The weight of her secret, finally revealed, settled upon the room, changing everything. The pen slipped from Mr. Thompson's fingers, clattering against the polished surface of his desk. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, a sharp punctuation marked to Sarah's revelation. It rolled once, twice, before coming to rest, a small, insignificant object that had somehow become a symbol of the seismic shift that had just occurred. His eyes widened, the surprise giving way to a flicker of something Sarah couldn't quite decipher. Shock, perhaps? Disbelief? Or something else entirely? He stared at her, his mind reeling. 18. The word echoed in his thoughts, a stark reminder of the age difference between them, of the power imbalance that defined their relationship. Everything he thought he knew about Sarah, about their interactions, about the boundaries he had so carefully constructed, suddenly felt flimsy and inadequate. The youthful enthusiasm he had dismissed as mere naivete now took on a different light. He had seen her as a promising intern, a bright young talent. Now, he saw her as a young woman, standing before him, vulnerable and exposed. The game had changed. And he wasn't sure he knew the rules anymore. What have I done? Mr. Thompson thought, the question echoing in his mind like a thunderclap. His carefully constructed world, built on rules and propriety, threatened to crumble around him. He had allowed himself to be charmed by her enthusiasm, by her intelligence, by her sheer presence. But he had never allowed himself to consider her as anything other than an employee. Now, everything was different. He was acutely aware of the potential consequences, the scandal that could erupt if their interaction were misconstrued. His career, his reputation, everything he had worked so hard to achieve, could be destroyed in an instant. But beneath the fear and the apprehension, another emotion stirred. A forbidden curiosity, a dangerous attraction that he had tried so desperately to suppress. He couldn't deny that he found her captivating, that her youthful energy was a balm to his weary soul. He wanted to know more about her dreams, her aspirations, her fears. But he knew he couldn't. He shouldn't. The risks were too great. He was the CEO. She was the intern. And she was just 18. The lines were blurred, and he had to find a way to redraw them, quickly. Sarah watched him, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected such a strong reaction. Maybe she had miscalculated. Maybe she had ruined everything. She had imagined a flicker of acknowledgement, perhaps a smile, maybe even a simple "Happy birthday." But she hadn't anticipated this stunned silence, this palpable internal struggle. I just wanted you to know," she stammered, trying to fill the void. "It's not like. I don't expect anything. I just thought, because we were working late, and it's my birthday. I didn't want to hide it." She paused, searching for the right words. "I admire you, Mr. Thompson. I admire your work ethic, your intelligence, everything you've accomplished. I just wanted you to see me, not just as an intern, but as a person." Her voice trembled, betraying her vulnerability. "Maybe it was stupid. I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable." She looked down at her hands, shame washing over her. Had she crossed a line she shouldn't have? Had she misread the signals? Had she made a terrible mistake? The silence was deafening. The silence stretched, an invisible barrier between them. Sarah's apology hung in the air, unanswered, unacknowledged. Mr. Thompson remained frozen, his gaze fixed on some unseen point beyond her. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning, a constant reminder of the sterile environment that surrounded them. Sarah couldn't read his expression. Was he angry? Disgusted? Or simply overwhelmed? She longed to know what he was thinking, what he was feeling. But he was a closed book, his emotions carefully guarded behind a mask of professionalism. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah felt like she was holding her breath, waiting for something to break. The weight of her actions pressed down on her, suffocating her. She had wanted to connect with him, to bridge the gap between them. But instead, she had created an unbridgeable chasm. She had shattered the fragile equilibrium of their working relationship, and she didn't know how to fix it. The silence continued, an agonizing testament to her mistake. She wished she could take back her words, erase the last few minutes, and return to the safety of their professional distance. But it was too late. The truth was out there, hanging between them, forever altering the landscape of their interactions. Finally, Mr. Thompson stirred. He took a deep breath, the sound audible in the stillness of the room. He reached for the fallen pen, his movements deliberate, as if he were carefully calibrating each action. He picked it up, examined it for a moment, then placed it back on the desk with a soft click. He looked at Sarah, his gaze direct and unwavering. The shock had faded from his eyes, replaced by a carefully constructed neutrality. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, his voice calm and measured. "For telling me. And for staying late to help. I appreciate your dedication." He paused, choosing his words with precision. "It's been a long day. I think we should both head home. You've been a great help, and I'll make sure your efforts are recognized." He stood up, a subtle signal that the conversation was over. "Happy birthday, Sarah," he added, a hint of warmth creeping into his voice. "I hope you have a wonderful evening." He walked towards the door, opening it for her. "I'll see you on Monday." His tone was polite, professional, and utterly devoid of any subtext. He had successfully erected a wall between them, a barrier that seemed impenetrable. He acted professionally. He was ending the night. Sarah nodded, her face flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and disappointment. She had hoped for something more, some sign that her revelation had made a difference. But Mr. Thompson had skillfully deflected any potential intimacy, retreating behind a wall of professionalism. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. She gathered her belongings, her movements stiff and awkward. As she walked past him, she caught a fleeting glimpse of something in his eyes, a flicker of regret, perhaps? Or was it just her imagination? She stepped out of the office, the cool night air a welcome relief against her burning cheeks. She walked towards the elevator, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. The doors opened, and she stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. As the elevator descended, she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. A wave of emotions washed over her, disappointment, embarrassment, and a lingering sense of sadness. She had risked everything, bared her soul, and for what? A polite dismissal and a hollow "Happy birthday." It seemed she had been wrong. Things hadn't stopped being just about work. If anything, they were now even more about work than before. She left the office feeling small. Back in his office, Mr. Thompson sat in the darkness, the city lights twinkling outside his window like a million unanswered questions. He replayed the evening in his mind, every word, every gesture, every fleeting expression on Sarah's face. He couldn't shake the image of her standing before him, vulnerable and sincere, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation. He knew he had done the right thing, the responsible thing. He had protected his career, his reputation, and perhaps Sarah herself from a potentially disastrous situation. But a part of him couldn't help but wonder what might have been. What if he had responded differently? What if he had allowed himself to acknowledge the connection he felt, however fleeting and inappropriate it might be? He knew he could never cross that line. He had too much to lose, and Sarah deserved better than a clandestine affair with her boss. But the loneliness that had been his constant companion seemed to intensify, a heavy weight on his chest. He longed for connection, for genuine intimacy, but he knew it was a luxury he couldn't afford. He was trapped by his own success, a prisoner of his own making. He was unable to sleep. He wondered if Sarah was able to sleep. Monday morning arrived, cloaked in an atmosphere of palpable tension. Sarah entered the office with a knot in her stomach, dreading the inevitable encounter with Mr. Thompson. She tried to avoid his gaze, focusing on her work, but she could feel his presence, a silent weight in the air. Mr. Thompson, too, seemed ill at ease. He avoided direct eye contact, his interactions with Sarah curt and formal. The easy camaraderie they had shared on Friday evening had vanished, replaced by a carefully constructed professional distance. The other employees noticed the change, whispering among themselves about the strained atmosphere. Lunchtime was even more awkward. Sarah ate at her desk, scrolling through social media, trying to distract herself from the tension that permeated the office. She saw pictures of her friends celebrating her birthday, a painful reminder of what she had missed. Mr. Thompson remained in his office, the door closed, a silent signal that he was unavailable. The day dragged on, each hour a test of Sarah's resolve. It was clear that things had changed, and she wasn't sure if they could ever go back to the way they were before. Late in the afternoon, a small package appeared on Sarah's desk. It was wrapped in plain brown paper, with no card or return address. Curiosity piqued, she carefully unwrapped it, revealing a small, leather-bound book of poetry by Emily Dickinson. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Who could have sent it? Her friends wouldn't know she appreciated poetry. The other interns barely acknowledged her existence. Could it be from Mr. Thompson? She flipped through the pages, her fingers tracing the delicate lines of verse. The poems spoke of longing, of unspoken desires, of the beauty and pain of human connection. A single, pressed flower lay tucked between the pages, a delicate forget-me-not. A wave of emotion washed over her, hope, confusion, and a flicker of renewed excitement. Was this a secret message? A subtle acknowledgement of the connection they had shared on Friday night? Or was it just a random act of kindness from a secret admirer? She clutched the book to her chest, her mind racing. She needed to know. She had to find out who had sent it. It offered hope. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, Sarah surreptitiously observed Mr. Thompson, searching for any clue, any sign that would confirm her suspicions. But he remained as inscrutable as ever, his face a mask of professional detachment. He didn't acknowledge her, didn't even glance in her direction. The more she watched him, the more confused she became. Could he really be the one who sent the book? It seemed so out of character for the stoic, reserved CEO. And yet the poetry itself seemed to speak to something deeper, a hidden vulnerability that she had glimpsed on Friday night. As the day drew to a close, Sarah made a decision. She couldn't bear the uncertainty any longer. She needed to know the truth, one way or another. She would ask him. She would confront him directly and demand an answer. Gathering her courage, she walked towards his office, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached for the door, hesitated for a moment, then knocked softly. A voice, deep and resonant, answered from within. "Come in." It was now or never. She had to know if Mr. Thompson had given her the gift. Sarah stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. Mr. Thompson was seated at his desk, reviewing some documents. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Sarah," he said, his voice neutral. "Is there something I can help you with?" He gestured towards a chair, but Sarah remained standing. She clutched the book of poetry in her hands, her knuckles white. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I received a gift today. A book of poetry." She paused, searching for the right words. "I know this may sound strange, but I was wondering, did you send it?" She held her breath, waiting for his response. Mr. Thompson's expression didn't change. He regarded her with a calm, steady gaze. "What makes you think I sent it, Sarah?" he asked, his voice even. Sarah hesitated. It seemed like something you might appreciate." And after Friday night, I thought maybe it was a way of acknowledging what happened. She looked at him pleadingly, desperate for some sign of recognition. Mr. Thompson remained silent for a moment, his eyes searching hers. Then, he sighed, a hint of weariness in his voice. "Please sit down, Sarah. We need to talk." He was finally going to say something. Sarah hesitantly sat down, her eyes fixed on Mr. Thompson. He steepled his fingers, his expression serious. "Sarah," he began, his voice gentle but firm, I appreciate your honesty, and I understand why you might think I sent the book. But I didn't. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. I value you as an intern, Sarah. You're bright, hardworking, and you have a lot of potential. I want to see you succeed. That's why I'm going to be very blunt with you. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. What happened on Friday night was a mistake. It was inappropriate, and it can happen again. I understand that you may have feelings for me, but I can't reciprocate them. I'm your boss, and you're an intern. Our relationship must remain strictly professional. He sighed. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but I felt it was important to be honest with you. I don't want to give you any false hope or lead you on in any way. He wanted her to understand. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to protect them both. He was very serious. Sarah listened, her heart sinking with each word. She had known, deep down, that this was the most likely outcome, but hearing it aloud still stung. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to let him see her cry. I understand, Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry if I made things awkward. She looked down at her hands, shame washing over her once again. Mr. Thompson softened his tone slightly. Don't be, Sarah. You're young, and it's natural to have feelings. I just want to make sure we're both on the same page. He paused. I'm committed to your growth as an intern. You have a bright future ahead of you, and I want to help you achieve your goals. He offered her a small, reassuring smile. In fact, I'd be happy to write you a letter of recommendation when you apply to college. I think you have the potential to do great things. He paused and looked at her earnestly. I'm sure if you work hard you will get a great education at a university. Your potential is great. Sarah nodded, her heart aching with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. He was offering her a chance to move on, to pursue her dreams, to build a future for herself. She just had to let go of her foolish crush and focus on her work. It was hard, but she knew it was the right thing to do. She respected his decision. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, she said, offering him a small, genuine smile. I appreciate that. She stood up, the book of poetry still clutched in her hand. I should get back to work. She turned to leave, but paused at the door. Mr. Thompson, she said, her voice soft. Whoever sent me the book, thank you. It was very thoughtful. She didn't wait for his response. She simply turned and walked away, leaving him alone in his office, the silence once again closing in around him. As Sarah returned to her desk, she felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the ending she had hoped for, but it was an ending nonetheless. She had learned a valuable lesson about boundaries, about professionalism, and about the importance of focusing on her own goals. She opened the book of poetry, her fingers tracing the delicate lines of verse. The poem still spoke of longing and desire, but now, they also spoke of resilience and hope. She carefully placed the book on her desk, a reminder of the lessons she had learned and the future that lay ahead. She refocused on her work. She was excited about her future. She was ready to move on. Sarah continued her internship at Thompson Industries, throwing herself into her work with renewed vigor. She absorbed every lesson, embraced every challenge, and quickly became a valuable asset to the team. She applied to several universities, her application bolstered by a glowing letter of recommendation from Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson watched her from afar, always aware of her presence, always mindful of the boundaries he had established. He saw her potential, her drive, her unwavering commitment to excellence. He knew she was destined for great things. He never learned who sent Sarah the book of poetry. But sometimes, when he was alone in his office, late at night, he would find himself wondering what might have been. What if he had been braver? What if he had allowed himself to acknowledge the connection he had felt? What if? It was a question that would likely haunt him for the rest of his days. But he knew he had made the right choice. He had protected Sarah, and he had protected himself. And sometimes, that was all that mattered. Sarah was moving on. Mr. Thompson was staying where he was. He will always wonder.